Wednesday, 17th August 2016. Just after 5 in the morning, London was starting its day. At the same time, officers from the Met's Organised Vehicle Crime Unit were parked outside a small pub in Manor Park. For weeks, they'd been following a pattern: luxury cars disappearing from driveways overnight. And by the end of the week, those vehicles would be sitting in a storage unit 200 miles away, stripped down to their engines. No alarms or no signs of how they were taken. Every line of inquiry pointed back to the same place. That morning, they were ready to find out why. What began as a local investigation would soon uncover a chain stretching far beyond London to a quiet storage unit in Essex and a pair of workshops in West London. Different crews, different methods, but the same result: cars gone without a trace. This is the story of 3 operations that changed the way British police hunted organised car thieves and how one morning search exposed them all. Welcome to UK Crime Documentaries. Let's get straight into the case. Between 2015 and 2016, a highly organised car theft network operated across East London, a group later compared by police to the precision of the film Gone in 60 Seconds. At its centre was Manjit Sandhu, a 32-year-old ringleader from Newham who was already serving a suspended sentence for a similar offence. His new operation was larger, more calculated, and designed to exploit one weakness in London's most affluent suburbs: the trust that car keys were safe inside family homes. Sandhu didn't work alone. His closest associate, Hina Bucks, just 21 at the time, helped identify vehicles and coordinate pickups. Investigators later found messages between her and Sandhu, arranging meeting points and passing on target information. However, the group's financial link was Sandhu's girlfriend, Tessa Penalva. We will talk about this in a later part of this video. The rest of the team formed a structured unit. Khurram Zaman and Mohammed Islam handled physical entries, breaking into homes through unlocked or forced UPVC doors to grab car keys within minutes. Jeffrey Cairns and Sufyan Mahmood were the drivers, responsible for moving stolen vehicles to storage sites within hours of the theft. Faisal Khan and Humza Pariwala played smaller but vital roles, assisting with cloned number plates and moving vehicles between safe houses. Over a 17-month period, police linked the group to more than 120 stolen vehicles, worth close to £3 million in total. The cars weren't random. They targeted prestige brands: Range Rovers, BMWs, Mercedes and Audis, models that could be stripped quickly or exported abroad for higher resale value. Each theft was timed and rehearsed, with the group operating almost nightly in areas like Hornchurch, Leytonstone, Walthamstow and Forest Gate. By the time detectives began connecting the thefts, the gang had built a self-sustaining cycle: cars stolen to order, sold through contacts overseas, and profits laundered back through Penalva's accounts. What looked like isolated burglaries across East London was, in reality, a single network run with business-like discipline, one that would take months of surveillance to unpick. The gang moved with military precision. Most jobs took place between 2 a.m. and 5 a.m, when the streets were silent and entry was quick and almost invisible. Using a screwdriver or a flat plastic door card, they would slip the latch on UPVC doors, the kind most homeowners believed were secure once the handle was lifted. In reality, unless turned fully with a key, the mechanism stayed vulnerable. Once inside, they didn't wander. They knew exactly where to look. Hallway tables, kitchen counters, and key hooks by the door, all common spots where car keys were left overnight. Within minutes, the thieves were back outside, headlights flashing once before disappearing into the quiet streets. But Sandhu's crew didn't always rely on break-ins. When the doors were locked tight, they had another way in, one that didn't need a single scratch on the paintwork. We will discuss this in a few minutes. Victims often woke to silence: no broken glass, no sign of forced entry, only an empty driveway. The missing vehicles weren't random. They were Range Rovers, BMWs, Mercedes and Jaguars, the kind of models worth tens of thousands even when broken for parts. The operation relied on speed. But how did they pass through London night after night without drawing attention? The answer was not force, it was technology. And we will discuss it in a few minutes. Neighbors rarely saw or heard anything. Police reports describe burglaries so swift that entire streets remained unaware until officers arrived the next morning. One particularly brazen theft even saw gang members return to the same road twice in a single week, taking two different vehicles from neighboring homes. It was organized, relentless, and almost invisible. By the time the scale became clear, more than £3 million worth of luxury cars had disappeared from driveways across the capital. And the gang was still expanding its reach. This network was not dependent on brute force. Its edge came from equipment, professional-grade key programming devices, blank transponder keys and blank fobs, items legitimate locksmiths use, repurposed here to defeat vehicle security. When officers executed warrants at the pub in Manor Park, they found those very items in the basement, but we will talk about this in the later part of this video. The presence of that kit transformed otherwise ordinary burglaries into fast, repeatable thefts. The technology removed the need for violent entries or hot wiring. Cars fitted with keyless or push-button ignition systems could be started once a programmed blank had been created. Prosecutors told the court these devices allowed the gang to bypass manufacturers' immobilizers and start the engine in seconds. And that was the crucial part of the whole operation. A theft that once required time and noise could now be done in a matter of minutes, reducing exposure and making detection less likely. Once a vehicle was in their control, the gang used an operational cover that was deliberately low-key. They moved stolen cars in vehicles made to look like private hire minicabs, complete with Transport for London private hire stickers. The stickers and the familiar silhouette of a minicab allowed stolen cars to sit in traffic, travel through checkpoints and pass as ordinary late-night journeys. That cover was another vital move to minimize attention during movement from street to safe house, or from holding site to dismantling location. Disposal followed two main routes. Some cars were replated and sold in the UK or to other criminal buyers. Others were prepared for export, often to Africa and Eastern Europe. Court evidence included recovered examples where a high-value vehicle had been stowed in a shipping container among household items bound for overseas markets. In one instance, prosecutors described a car found hidden among furniture in a shipping crate at Felixstowe, proof of an established export pipeline. Other stolen motors were stripped for parts in secure yards and workshops. Those parts entered separate supply chains and were harder for investigators to trace. The combination of the technical capability to create working keys and the practical cover of private hire disguises gave the gang operational freedom. They could take prestige vehicles from suburban driveways, move them through London in plain sight, and disassemble or ship them with minimal immediate suspicion. That mixture of specialist tools and mundane camouflage is what made the ring both efficient and difficult to track, until coordinated surveillance and targeted warrants interrupted the cycle. By mid-2016, detectives in the Metropolitan Police's Organised Vehicle Crime Unit began to see something that didn't add up. Dozens of burglary reports, all involving the same brands of luxury cars, were surfacing across East and West London. Each incident followed an identical pattern. When stolen cars began reappearing, replated, disguised, or partially stripped, the team realized this wasn't a series of isolated thefts. It was a coordinated system. Analysts started cross-checking automatic number plate recognition data from across London. That's when the first anomaly appeared. The same number plate, logged twice on different cars in two separate boroughs within minutes of each other. It wasn't a simple cloning case. It was evidence of a professional network moving vehicles rapidly through the city. CCTV footage strengthened the link. Cameras captured several of the stolen vehicles traveling what looked like a minicab. Detectives began suspecting that the gang was disguising their stolen cars to blend into everyday traffic, particularly during night runs. With a pattern established, the Met turned its attention to known offenders. Among the names that surfaced repeatedly was Manjit Sandhu. Officers began surveillance on his movements and those of his close associates, including Hina Bucks and Faisal Khan. Tracker devices were quietly fitted to vehicles connected to the suspects. Within days, investigators saw consistent nighttime routes between Forest Gate, Leytonstone, Hornchurch and Manor Park. The paths all converged near a single address, a pub called the Blakesley Arms, run by Sandhu's father. It was there that police suspected the cars were being stored or processed before disappearing from the country. The surveillance confirmed enough to act. In response, the Met launched Operation Brass Hand, a full-scale investigation into organised car theft and export networks across London. What began as a handful of suspicious burglaries was now pointing toward a multi-million-pound enterprise and a ringleader hiding in plain sight. Wednesday, 17th August 2016. Just after dawn, teams from the Metropolitan Police's Organised Vehicle Crime Command assembled outside the Blakesley Arms pub in Manor Park, East London. To the public, it was a quiet, family-run business. But for detectives, it was the suspected headquarters of one of London's most prolific car theft networks, run, as they later confirmed, by the ringleader's own father. When officers forced entry into the basement, what they found confirmed months of investigation. Inside were bags filled with car keys, blank key fobs, key programming devices, and specialist lock-picking tools. Everything needed to clone, start, and move a keyless vehicle within minutes. Some of the devices were traced to suppliers that normally sold only to licensed locksmiths and dealerships, a clear sign of how far the gang had gone to appear legitimate. Upstairs, the bar still looked like it had closed for the night. Beer mats on tables, glasses stacked behind the counter, nothing out of place. Meanwhile, other teams were moving in on connected addresses in Hornchurch, Forest Gate, and Leytonstone. Within hours, several members of the group, including Mohammed Islam, Jeffrey Cairns, Hina Bucks, and Faisal Khan, were in custody. The digital evidence sealed the case. One of the stolen BMWs had been fitted with a dashcam, and when officers recovered the footage, it showed Sandhu's men climbing into the car, unaware they were being filmed. Another piece of footage, this time from a McDonald's drive-through CCTV camera, showed Sufyan Mahmood and Hina Bucks in a stolen vehicle ordering food, casually smiling at the window. Even more incriminating was Sandhu's own CCTV system at his Hornchurch home. Detectives found recordings of him leaving his property in the early hours, often returning just before sunrise, matching the time frames of multiple thefts. By mid-morning, Sandhu had gone into hiding, but with the evidence stacked against him, his arrest was only a matter of time. Operation Brass Hand had exposed the full scale of a network that had stolen over £3 million worth of luxury cars, and for the first time, police could see how every piece of the puzzle fit together. In March 2017, the case finally reached Suffolk Crown Court, and 8 core members of the stood before the court. Another most shocking fact that came to surface in the hearings was the gang was moving the profits through Sandhu's girlfriend's account. Tessa Painova faced separate proceedings after evidence showed she had laundered more than £118,000 in criminal earnings through her bank account, despite being unemployed and receiving state benefits. She had even paid companies that supplied locksmith tools and key programming devices, purchases now known to have supported the gang's operations. Detective Inspector Caroline Clooney, who led the Met's Organised Vehicle Crime Unit, addressed the impact of the crimes directly. They brought distress to every household they touched, not only the loss of property, but the fear of knowing someone was in their home while they slept. She used the moment to issue a public warning, highlighting a simple security flaw that had made many homes vulnerable. Almost all of the houses burgled had UPVC doors that weren't double-locked. I urge every homeowner, lift the handle, but also use the key. Without that, the door can be opened in seconds. After weeks of testimony and evidence, the sentences reflected both the complexity and the harm caused. Manjit Sandhu, 32, received the longest sentence, 12 years in prison, which included the activation of a previous suspended sentence for vehicle theft. Hina Bucks, 21, was jailed for 9 years and 6 months. Sufian Mahmood, 19, was sentenced to 7 years and 6 months. Faisal Khan, 23, and Churam Zaman, 20, were each given 4 years and 6 months for their part in the conspiracy. Mohammed Islam, 21, was sentenced to 3 years, while Jeffrey Cairns, 55, was jailed for 3 years and 6 months. The final member, Hamza Pariwala, 23, received 18 months after admitting his role in the burglaries. Reports only suggested that Tessa Painova was convicted in 2018 of converting criminal property and conspiring to pervert the course of justice. Her sentencing was reported to include a custodial term, but the exact length was not publicly disclosed, marking the final link in a network that stretched from London streets to overseas buyers. In total, the gang received more than 46 years in combined sentences. Years later, the pattern returned, but this time, it wasn't London. It was the fields of Essex. And behind one quiet barn, another empire was being built. By early 2024, Essex police were tracking a new network, one that appeared far more structured than a typical car theft ring. At its head was Wahid Youssef, 29, from Ilford. Investigators would later describe him as the organizer, the man who decided which vehicles to steal, where they should be taken, and how the parts would be moved. Beneath him was a small disciplined hierarchy, each member handling one stage of the operation. Mohammed Bukhari from Luton managed logistics and cash flow. He arranged payments for shipments, tools, and labor, ensuring the dismantling unit ran like a business. Beside him, Stanley van der Berg from Borehamwood acted as the transporter, responsible for collecting the stolen cars and delivering them to the gang's main base, a rural property in Little Bardfield, near Finchingfield, Essex. They weren't alone. 4 men handled the physical dismantling: David Nakashidze, George Abshandadze, Revaz Mumladze, and Lucas Miskauskas, each specializing in stripping high-value vehicles down to their core components. Another man, Michael Casey from Brentwood, played a peripheral but vital role, helping move stolen parts and coordinate storage after thefts. Together, the group formed what police later called a highly sophisticated chop shop network, capable of dismantling dozens of vehicles in secret and selling the components on the black market. The investigation eventually linked them to 47 stolen vehicles, valued between £2.8 and £3.3 million. Their targets were never random. The gang focused on top-tier models: Range Rovers, Jaguars, Land Rovers, and BMWs. Vehicles stolen from across Essex, Hertfordshire, Devon, and Southampton were traced back to the same unit, hidden behind the gates of a farm that to outsiders looked ordinary. We will talk about this in a few minutes. Youssef's team worked methodically. Stolen vehicles arrived under cover of darkness and left again in pieces. We will talk about this in a few minutes. It wouldn't be long before a single tip-off would expose what was happening behind those barn doors and unravel a network that stretched far beyond the Essex countryside. It all began when investigators noticed a pattern in the data. Several luxury vehicles stolen from across the south were all last seen travelling in the direction of rural North Essex. One name kept appearing in automatic number plate recognition logs and surveillance notes: Little Bardfield, near Finchingfield. To anyone driving past, the rented unit there looked like nothing more than a quiet farm storage barn, a low, corrugated building surrounded by hedgerows and machinery. But as detectives would later learn, it was anything but. At night, the site came to life. Large vehicles arrived under cover of darkness, car transporters and recovery trucks carrying new or nearly new models that had vanished from driveways across Essex, Hertfordshire, and Devon. Each car was driven straight inside and the doors closed behind them. A witness grew suspicious after seeing large cars entering the farm unit and finding a Land Rover Discovery inside with children's car seats and personal belongings still there. They reported it to police. That single observation shifted the investigation. Detectives obtained a warrant to install covert cameras around the property. For the next 115 days, they recorded activity inside and outside the barn. In clips later shown in court, gang members were seen methodically stripping high-end cars down to bare shells. What detectives found at that location will be revealed in a few minutes. By May 2024, the investigation had entered its most crucial phase. Detectives from Essex Police's Serious and Organised Crime Directorate, supported by the Stolen Vehicle Intelligence Unit, were following a new trail. One that led from the fields of Essex to the docks of the Thames. Intelligence gathered from phone data and freight records pointed towards a shipping container at London Gateway Port, due to depart for West Africa. When officers opened it, the pattern they had suspected for months became clear. Inside were 2 Range Rovers and a Toyota Land Cruiser, together worth more than £80,000. All 3 had been reported stolen, 2 from London, 1 from Essex, and each carried false registration plates designed to disguise their origin. Around the vehicles, detectives found household furniture and goods, carefully arranged to make the load appear legitimate to customs inspectors. The seizure confirmed what investigators had long believed. The Little Bardfield unit wasn't just dismantling cars. It was feeding a network that moved stolen vehicles and parts overseas. The discovery of the container gave them the proof they needed of an international export route, linking thefts across counties to organised shipping operations bound for Africa and the Middle East. In the same operation, officers uncovered another chop shop in Western Essex, containing the remains of 4 stolen vehicles stripped for resale. The coordination between dismantling sites and export hubs revealed the sophistication of the network. Every element, from the cloning of plates to the concealment inside freight containers, had been engineered to make the vehicles vanish beyond trace. For the detectives who had tracked the gang for months, the container find was the breakthrough moment. It tied together every part of the puzzle: the stolen luxury cars, the rural farm unit, and the international links behind them. What started as a local car theft inquiry had now exposed a cross-border operation, one that stretched from Essex workshops to shipping ports thousands of miles away. When officers finally stepped inside the Little Bardfield unit, what they found looked less like a workshop and more like a production line. Cars stood in rows, each one at a different stage of disassembly, some reduced to bare metal frames, others stripped of doors, dashboards, and engines. The vehicle identification numbers had been ground away, while components were neatly stacked and tagged for sorting. It was clear that every movement inside that barn had a purpose. This wasn't a backstreet garage improvising with stolen cars. It was an organized process designed for maximum profit and minimal traceability. During the search, officers recovered signal jammers, relay attack devices, and forged logbooks, the kind used to mask the true identity of stolen vehicles. These tools showed just how technically capable the gang had become. They weren't forcing ignitions or breaking windows. They were intercepting electronic signals, cloning keys, and replicating legitimate paperwork to pass the parts off as genuine. Hidden towards the rear of the unit were 3 large shipping containers, each filled with dismantled parts from multiple vehicles. Some bore shipping labels listing destinations in the United Arab Emirates, with Dubai marked as the endpoint. Inside one, investigators found gearboxes, engines, and Range Rover body panels tightly packed alongside pieces of furniture, a deliberate disguise to avoid suspicion during customs inspections. Forensic teams worked through the night, documenting evidence, tracing parts back to stolen cars across the UK. At dawn on the 27th of June, 2024, months of surveillance and coordination came to a head. Teams from Essex and Kent Police's Serious Crime Directorate launched a series of simultaneous raids across 8 addresses linked to the chop shop network. The operation, planned down to the minute, was aimed at dismantling the entire organization in one sweep. In Ilford, officers surrounded a terraced property on Stanhope Gardens, home of ringleader Wahid Youssef. Within minutes, he was in custody. In Luton, another team moved on Mohammed Bukhari's address in Connaught Road, seizing cash, documents, and mobile phones. North of London in Boreham Wood, detectives arrested Stanley van der Berg. At the same time, further arrests were carried out hundreds of miles away. In Warwickshire, 3 more members of the group, David Nakashidze, George Abjandadze, and Rivas Mumladze, were detained after weeks of tracing vehicles and communications linked to their movements. The investigation didn't stop there. In August 2024, a tracker signal from a stolen vehicle led officers to a property in Nazing, where they found Lucas Muskauskas working on another dismantled car. The discovery added further proof of the gang's reach beyond Essex. A month later, in September, the final suspect, Michael Casey, 24, from Brentwood, was tracked down and arrested. When the case finally reached Chelmsford Crown Court in June 2024, prosecutors laid out months of painstaking investigation and presented overwhelming evidences. Each man's role was defined in court. Wahid Youssef, 29, of Stanhope Gardens, Ilford, was jailed for 6 years and 1 month. His trusted right-hand man, Mohammed Bukhari, 28, of Connaught Road, Luton, received 4 years and 7 months, while Stanley van der Berg, 25, of Boreham Wood, was sentenced to 4 years and 8 months. Lucas Muskauskas, 29, of Harlow, received 5 years. David Nakashidze, 46, was sentenced to 4 years and 6 months, and both Rivas Mumladze, 42, and George Abjandadze, 51, were each jailed for 4 years and 5 months. The final defendant, Michael Casey, 24, from Brentwood, was convicted in his absence and sentenced to 2 years and 8 months. In total, the group's combined sentences amounted to 36 years and 4 months. Between 2015 and 2017, the quiet streets of West London, Chelsea, Notting Hill, and Maida Vale became the hunting ground for 2 of the most elusive car thieves the Met had ever pursued. Their names were Tariq El-Ghazaili, 36, and Hakim Aziz, 30. They also used digital tools to take luxury cars without leaving a single mark. Police would later call them the keyless duo. Their targets were high-end vehicles too, stolen from residential streets at night. Using key programming devices, they could clone the electronic signal of a vehicle's key and create a working copy in less than a minute. Once done, they would unlock, start, and drive away undetected. Over 2 years, more than 30 cars vanished under similar circumstances. Victims often found no signs of forced entry, just an empty space where their car had been. Detectives at the Metropolitan Police's Organised Vehicle Crime Unit began to suspect a pattern. Each stolen car was soon found wearing cloned plates and accompanied by forged vehicle logbooks, all pointing to a single organised source. By late 2017, investigators had traced multiple cloned registrations to the same individuals. They set up surveillance on properties linked to El-Ghazaili and Aziz. Then, on December 6, 2017, a coordinated operation brought the investigation to its peak. At Gunter Grove, Chelsea, officers found blank vehicle keys, signal jammers, and tracking blockers. A second property in Lonsdale Road, Notting Hill, revealed the core of the operation. A laptop used to produce 172 sets of false number plates, along with forged logbooks and number plate printers. Forensic analysis showed 29 of those plates had already been used on stolen vehicles worth over £1.25 million, though police believed the total could exceed £6 million. At Aziz's home in Maida Vale, 5 more blank keys were recovered. Both men were arrested and charged with conspiracy to convert criminal property, a charge reflecting the scale of their operation. In court, both pleaded guilty. Tariq El-Ghazaili was sentenced to 6 years in prison, and Hakim Aziz was jailed to 4 years and 4 months. What do you think about the cases and the sentences? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear your take. And if you found this breakdown informative, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next episode of UK Crime Documentaries.